Hi, and welcome back. Focal Point AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. Rand Paul's filiblizzard is continuing in the snowstorm in Washington, D.C. And, as Rob pointed out, my director pointed out on the break, this is really his first campaign speech. I mean, Rand Paul's running for president in 2016, and this is a campaign speech. I mean, he's got the undivided attention of anybody that watches C-SPAN. Anybody that's paying any attention to what's going on the floor of the United States Senate, he's got everybody's undivided attention. Not a bad way to kick off a campaign for the presidency, and not a bad issue to launch his campaign on. Filibustering to protect the Constitution of the United States. Now, Ted Cruz and Eric Holder apparently went at it back and forth this morning, and Ted Cruz had to badger Eric Holder, but he badgered him long enough that finally, Eric Holder said no, it would not be appropriate to launch a drone strike on an American citizen on American soil. He said, no, the issue is no longer over what's appropriate. It's just a plain no. I thought that's what I was saying. It's not what he was saying. But, the striking thing is, he gets Eric Holder to say no, that would not be appropriate. But he had to be virtually handcuffed to the chair to acknowledge that. That should have been the first thing out of its mouth. Absolutely not. There's no way in the world we would ever justify a drone attack on an American citizen. But it took him who knows how many days and hours before he finally said that. So, he strikes me, reminds me of the little girl that was sent to the corner. And, she said she was, because she wouldn't sit down. And she says in rebellion, well, I might have been sitting down on the outside, but I was still standing up on the inside. And that's the impression you get with Eric Holder. Now, let's grab clip number 6. This is Rand Paul talking yesterday when he had received a letter from Eric Holder saying, hey, a drone strike is okay. Here's what Rand Paul said about it yesterday.
I find it particularly disturbing. In fact, one of the things I actually admired about the president when he ran for office was that he believed that we should have warrants before we tapped people's phone, that we should have some due process. So he wants a warrant to tap your phone, but he wants no judicial oversight to kill an American. And I think what's important about this is listen to what his response is. His response is, we haven't killed any Americans yet. We don't intend to, but we might. And that's pretty disturbing. And the thing about the drone strike program is we're not talking about someone's actively attacking America. We're not talking about planes flying into the World Trade Center. What we're talking about is you're eating dinner in your house, you're eating at a cafe, or you're walking down the road. That's when these drone strikes can occur. It's not about people involved in combat. It's about people who they think might be.
So that's Rand Paul yesterday. And this business about we don't intend to. I remember Larry Craig when he was caught toe-tapping in that stall in the Minnesota airport. And I was at the press conference where he said this. He said, I intend to resign on September 30. That's my intention. And he emphasized that word, and nobody made anything of it at the time. I remember being kind of struck by the fact that he placed so much emphasis on the word intend. I intend to resign on September 30th. Well, then he changed his mind. And so he could say, well, I just said I was going to. I was planning to. That's all I was saying. I was planning to, but I changed my mind. So when the Obama administration says we don't intend to strafe any of our own citizens with drones, that leaves them with a whole lot of wiggle room. Now, an issue has come up, and this is clip 7. An issue has come up, and Jeff. Well, now we'll save that little punctuation since it comes from the same guy. But here's John Kerry, and the issue that's come up with Benghazi is, look, we know that there were 30 survivors of that attack on the consulate in Benghazi, and what people have been wanting to know for weeks on end. Who are these people? Where are these people? Why can't we talk to them? Why are they being kept under wraps? What do they have to hide? What stories could they tell that would be lethal for this administration? And John Kerry is asked that question last night. Here's what he had to say.
Why have we not heard from any of the Benghazi survivors?
Well, I mean, I can't tell you the answer to that. I can tell you that I have visited with one of the survivors at Bethesda Hospital.
Will we hear from them?
I don't know what the circumstances are of any request to talk to him or not.
President Obama vowed that the perpetrators of those attacks would be brought to justice. As you know, any law enforcement or counterterrorism officer would tell you the longer the passage of time after the given event, the less likely it is that you will bring the perpetrators to justice. It's been 6 months. Will we see justice brought to those perpetrators, and isn't the passage of time making that more and more unlikely?
James, I hope we will, and I know the president is committed to try to do so.
And you're 6 months out.
Justice sometimes takes a while when you operate by high standards and when you need the levels of evidence that we do.
So that's John Kerry just hemming and hawing about bringing these perpetrators to justice and about talking to the survivors of the attack on the consulate. And you know we talked about this before. I had that story that 2 days after that attack on the consulate, there were international reporters talking to one of the main perpetrators who was sipping Mai Tais out on the patio of one of the luxury hotels in Benghazi. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't running for his life. He obviously knew that he had nothing to fear. And then there was a country that actually detained the prime suspect. Was that Tanzania? I forget who retained him, but they let him go. And our guys didn't even have a chance to interrogate him. The FBI doesn't show up at the consulate for 3 weeks. So all this business about we're determined to bring these perpetrators to justice rings pretty hollow. Now here is Jason Chaffetz. He's a congressman. This is clip 8. He's a congressman from Utah, and he has a similar question that was asked of John Kerry about these survivors of the Benghazi attack, and he has some additional information. Let's listen.
We happen to find the father of the person who is still in the hospital. And without breaking any trust here, but as being open, as transparent as I can, the father told me if you had called into the hospital previously, you would never have found that person because they changed his name on the hospital records.
So they're changing the names, according to Jason Chaffetz. They're changing the names on official records of the survivors of the Benghazi attack. Here's somebody had to be hospitalized. He's still in the hospital. That attack happened, you remember, on September 11. Here we are into March, and he's still in the hospital. But you never would be able to find him, even if you had a list of the names of the people that survived the Benghazi attack. You wouldn't be able to locate this guy because they changed his name on the hospital record. So that is what's going on with the whole Benghazi deal. Now, number to call if you want to join the program is 888-589-8840. 888-589-8840 is the number to call. You know, and while we're on the topic of Islam, we had this story last week. Maybe you heard about this, about what's going on in the public school system in Texas, where students are being forced to wear burqas to class. You have this Islamification of the state of Texas, and the teachers are saying because of this C-scope curriculum, they don't have any choice. They have to Islamize their students. Here's a piece by Todd Starnes. Imagine browsing Facebook one day and discovering a photograph of your 14-year-old daughter wearing a burqa at school. That's exactly what happened to a parent in Lumberton, Texas. Now, who would have thought that Lumberton, Texas would be a locale where Sharia law and Sharia standards were being introduced into American life without any parental notification, knowledge, consent, or permission. Her daughter's world geography class was supposed to be learning about the continents. Instead, they were given a tutorial in Islam complete with authentic Muslim garments. Some of the young ladies were photographed, and the image has now gone viral. The students were told the purpose of the class was to change their perceptions of Islam. They were instructed to no longer call those who commit terrorist attacks terrorists. Instead, the Muslim terrorists were to be called freedom fighters. Now imagine that you had a class that teachers were ordered to teach, and they were given a curriculum, and they were ordered to teach this curriculum, and the purpose of the curriculum was to change the perceptions that their students had of Christianity. In other words, you've been hearing all these people talk about how Christians are lunatics, how they're whack jobs, how they're nutcases, how they're Victorian blue noses, and in this curriculum, we are going to order you, we're going to force you, we are going to mandate that you teach this class, which is designed to change the way your students think about Christianity. We're going to order you to teach a class that makes them think wonderful, glorious things about Christianity. Now, can you imagine any school being able to get away with that without an apocalyptic reaction from the ACLU? Well, let's go to the phones. Let's go to George, Jefferson County, Missouri. George, welcome to Focal Point. What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing, Brian?
Good.
Thanks for what you're doing. Yeah, our president, I don't care who it was, white, black, green, yellow, from Mars. If they acted like this guy's acting, he's not a president. He's just a baby, and let's call the presidential wambulance. It's ridiculous what he does. We know who he hates, and it's us.
Well, and that's kind of the striking thing about it. And, I think what verifies it to me, George, I don't think that that's an exaggeration, that he basically despises the American people. He thinks that we're bitter clingers. We cling to our guns. We cling to our Bibles. We're benighted. We're ignorant. We're uneducated. We are racist to the core. I mean, that's how President Obama thinks of the American people. And you look at this sequester. And I go back, George, to that email where the Obama administration is ordering federal personnel to make these sequester cuts as painful as they possibly can. I mean, it doesn't sound to me like a guy that's concerned about the pursuit of happiness of the American people. Does it sound like a way to you?
Well, I'll tell you what, those TSA agents, they're going to wear their uniforms. Janet Napolitano doesn't buy that much stuff with the American people's money and not have them let him use it. They're going to use it. He's going to do whatever he wants to do until somebody stops him.
All right, well, thank you, George. And Janet Napolitano caught in a lie. She said, look, you're going to have weights of up to 200% at places like O'Hare, Chicago. And the reporters called those airports and said, what about these delays, these catastrophic delays? They said, we don't know what you're talking about. Everything is running smoothly here. Even got an FAA map to prove it. Focal Point AFR Talk.